Welcome back. I finally found the time to make a video that I have wanted to make for a very long time. Before we jump in though, I did notice recently that a whole bunch of you guys are not subscribed. So make sure you do that right now. And also, I'm going to be asking at the end of the video for the baked good, and it's not gonna be so easy this time to find, so pay attention. Though I played for the Mets for 2 years, I'll admit I wasn't as familiar with the history of the team as I am with others, specifically the trauma that comes along with being a fan. My fan trauma came almost exclusively from the Seattle Mariners. So I decided to make a video about a little bit of Mets history, specifically the phenomenon known as the LOLmets. Where did it come from? Why does it happen? I'll attempt to answer those questions and more on this edition of Baseball, 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 Baseball. Leading up to the 2000 season, the Mets released then third baseman Bobby Bonilla. Instead of paying the contract out up front, the team offered to pay $1.2 million every single year from 2011 to 2035. That's 25 years. Of course he accepted. So now, each year on July 1st, the Mets pay him, henceforth known as Bobby Bonilla Day. The fans laud this deal to this day, fairly in my opinion, as the interest added has brought the total money paid out over $30 million when the original contract left was 5.9. The sad thing is the money isn't even the biggest issue. Since the moment this agreement went through, it seems like the Mets have dealt with controversy after controversy, both on and off the field. Unfortunately, the curse began immediately. In that same 2000 season, then Mets manager Bobby Valentine gave a short speech at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. Thinking that the contents of that speech were going to stay in that room, he decided to use his platform to air some grievances. He basically trashed his own team, complaining that he wasn't allowed to sit certain players and wasn't a huge fan of some of the more recent signings. It took a single student leaking the contents of the speech to the press to land Valentine in some hot water. The speech was then dubbed Whartongate. In that first decade, it seemed like high expectations were always immediately followed with crushing disappointment.
The Mets season came crashing to a close on Sunday as they were beaten by the Florida Marlins 8-1.
2002 saw some new acquisitions, including Mo Vaughn, Jeremy Burnitz, and Sean Estes all struggled to perform, along with the rest of the lineup that was already there. And before we knew it, a promising season turned into a spiral down into sub-500 ball. Only a few years later, the 2006 season brought a completely different brand of pain. The team was great all year, fantastic even. After finishing the regular season 97-65, winning the NL East division by 12 games handily, they advanced all the way to the NLCS as the #1 seed that year, only to get stunned in Game 7 by the Cardinals. They were one game away from getting back to the World Series. One game. Almost, but not quite. And sure, it was a tough way to end, but a lot of hope to build on. With all this potential, the next few years were guaranteed to be a new golden era. The fans believe. Oh, did I say golden era? I meant to say historic collapse era. A lot of foreshadowing in this video. In 2007, the Mets were again cruising towards October, but the wheels fell off the bus and they promptly lost 12 of the last 17 games of the season, completely missing the playoffs. Their fans were understandably distraught, so much so that they gave us the now infamous Sad Mets guy. 2008 also saw the Mets get eliminated from the playoffs, this time on the last day of the regular season, marking the first time since 1993 that neither New York Major League Baseball team made an appearance in October. Also in 2008, then manager Willie Randolph was fired in the middle of a road trip at 3 in the morning. It was a move that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, including fans, especially because the game that they had just played, they won. All of that aside, the biggest issue of the 2000s wasn't the players and it wasn't the front office. It was the ownership. In December of 2008, New York City financier Bernie Madoff was arrested for running one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in the history of finance, which it just so happened members of the Mets ownership group were profiting off of. Two of these owners, Fred Wilpon and Saul Katz, were forced to pay $1 billion in fines, understandably putting the team in a lot of financial distress. Payroll shrunk, and the Wilpons were forced to sell off part of the team to a gentleman named Steve Cohen. More on him in a bit. In the midst of all the chaos, there was a movement brewing, not from the newspapers or the clubhouse, but in rival chat rooms and blog posts around the country. The LOLmets were born. With the internet came a new wave of baseball fan. Anyone could talk about any player, any team, anytime, with anyone. This came with added scrutiny and predictably quite the nightmare for the Mets. The team is popular and is in the biggest sports market in the United States. Like it or not, every story, big or small, was going to get picked up and wrung out for every drop of attention possible. Unfortunately, the Mets couldn't help themselves and just kept giving them stories. And the LOLmets term became a blanket statement for whenever something went wrong. And boy, oh boy, did stuff keep going wrong. Remember Fred Wilpon, the owner that was implicated in the Bernie Madoff scheme, choosing to not learn from Bobby Valentine's previous mistake at Wharton? Mr. Wilpon decided to trash his own team in a 2011 interview in The New Yorker. He called David Wright not a superstar. He said Carlos Beltran was 60 to 70% of what he was. And he even called the team as a whole shitty. Hey, Fred, people are going to read this, right? Whew. I don't know about you guys. I think I need a break. Mayday. From 2010 to 2014, the teams were just not good at all, finishing under 500 each year. When I say everything was a story, everything was a story. For example, in 2016, a picture of then backup catcher Kevin Plawecki had an unusual object in the background. Plawecki later claimed that it was some sort of prank, and silly situations, owners bad-mouthing their team, and bad play aside, no one could stay healthy either. Concussions to Ryan Schertz and Jason Bay were mishandled, and both men probably played a lot longer than they should have. In 2010, Carlos Beltran had knee surgery without telling the team. David Wright got a stress fracture in his back in 2011 after trying to play through it for weeks. And as we know, back issues inevitably ended David Wright's career. Steven Matz played through shoulder soreness in 2015, which eventually led to a torn lat and a long stint on the IL. This is not to say that injuries don't happen to other teams, though. Everyone seems to have their own version of these issues, but what seemed to make these specific injuries unique was how they were consistently mishandled. It's as if somebody were playing an elaborate joke on the fan base. There wasn't a lot to be excited about. People were losing. Wait, in the World Series? Wait, they made the World Series? There was hope. Oh my God, the Mets are in the World Series in 2015. They're finally back in the dance. Matching up against the Kansas City Royals, the previous year's runner-up, the Mets quickly found themselves in a 3-1 hole in the series. There was hope, however, as Game 5 was in Flushing and they had their ace, Matt Harvey, on the mound. The Mets jumped to a quick 2-0 lead and held that lead for the first 8 innings of the game, in perfect position to hand it off to that year's NL saves leader, Jeurys Familia. Bring your closer in and live to fight another day. Except Matt Harvey wanted to finish this game himself and talked his way back out onto the mound. And then suddenly there's people on base. And then the game's tied. And then it went into extras. And then the season was over. LOL Mets, I guess. The rest of the 2010s passed kind of quietly for the Mets with a single wildcard appearance in 2016. They needed a change. Something completely new. Well, not that yet. That comes later. Enter Steve Cohen. Remember that guy who bought a minority ownership stake when the Wilpons had to sell some shares because they were caught in the Bernie Madoff pyramid scheme? Well, it just so happens that his estimated $14 billion net worth was enough to buy the rest of the team. A lifelong Mets fan himself, Uncle Steve brought a new brand of hope to Flushing. And it all started with his first signing, a handsome reliever from the Minnesota Twins. Cohen wasted no time retooling the team and giving out his first long-term extension to newly acquired shortstop Francisco Lindor to the tune of 10 years, $314 million. The Mets were officially exciting again. Unfortunately, simply changing owners was not enough to get rid of all of the problems that had plagued the organization for the last 20 years. They did spend why do I keep saying they? I was on the team. We did spend 103 days at the top of the division, albeit mostly because the Braves weren't playing very well and everyone else was like under 500 all year, just to end the season under 500 ourselves, taking third place in the division and missing the playoffs altogether. It wasn't the greatest start for Steve as a new owner, but as I mentioned before, how much could he do himself? And it wasn't just poor play. 2021 saw quite a few controversies, and the internet was on top of it. In January, newly hired general manager Jared Porter was fired for sending explicit texts to a female reporter. Not too long after that, Carlos Beltran was fired from his managerial job before the season even started for his involvement in the Astros sign-stealing scandal. If you remember, that information came out after the 2020 season. Later that season, the new GM that took over for Porter, Zach Scott, was put on leave after getting pulled over, coming back from a party at Steve Cohen's house. Even staff that wasn't even there anymore got in trouble, as former manager Mickey Callaway also got suspended for harassing members of the media. And then we have all the little player stuff, like the Rat Raccoon scandal, the Thumbs Down scandal, and those things, understandably, sent fans into a rage because things were not going as well as they had hoped. The theme continues. Hell, those two things alone could probably get their own video. It was absolutely ridiculous. Maybe we'll do it later. Just don't get me fired up right now. Like, now is not the time. Fortunately, the 2022 season went a lot better, though the bar was pretty low. The Mets signed Max Scherzer, who had one of his best years to date. The team won 101 games, made the playoffs. You could even say that most of the season went pretty well for them, right up till the end, I guess. So I get it. We were leading the division all year, a division that had been won the 4 years previously by the team chasing us, the Atlanta Braves. We then went into the final 3-game series in Atlanta, needing to win only one game to win the season tiebreaker and inevitably win the division. Unfortunately, they swept us. It was not very fun to be on social media after that happened. We ended the season, same exact record. It would have been really nice to maybe win the tiebreaker. I'm getting mad again. We matched up with the Padres. It's history. Go look up the box scores if you want to know what happened. Your boy's getting frustrated. Though, one silver lining, winning that second game in that series was my first playoff win. I had only been swept in the playoffs, though I did end my career 1-8. Is it me? Was it my fault? No. Maybe? And I pitched pretty good, so at least I got something out of it. That felt icky.
I was gonna say,
This takes us to 2023, the year of the pitch clock. So fun. Uncle Steve opened up his checkbook even wider, signing Justin Verlander to a 2-year, $88 million contract. He then joins Max Scherzer and newly assigned Japanese phenom Kodai Senga to put together what looks like on paper a pretty good 1-2-3 punch. The team seems reignited, ready to come back and build on a great 2022 season. Cut it. Edwin Diaz went down with a freak injury in the WBC, celebrating after Puerto Rico's win over the Dominican Republic. Justin Verlander dealt with his own injuries and was inevitably shipped back to the Astros halfway through the season. Scherzer would actually go to the Rangers, and the two would actually match up in the ALCS, with Scherzer eventually taking home a World Series ring that year. Jake DeGrom also got a ring, and we all love him. So, small victories. The Mets would unfortunately miss the playoffs completely that season with the biggest payroll on the planet. Mets fans get a lot of flack for their pessimism at times. It's sad to admit, I was one of the people dishing that out. Sometimes it was tough to focus on playing at a high level when you felt like everyone was just waiting for you to fail. But now, I know it was a me problem. How are you guys supposed to stay hopeful after everything we have just covered in this video? I was only there for like a year and a half at this point, so I get it, and I'm sorry. I mean, how could you expect anyone to maintain a hopeful face when you've just been bombarded by a deluge of unmet expectations for the last, 50 years? I have actual good news, finally. 2024. I don't know, I'm gonna do something with my hands there and then it's gonna appear. The offseason between 23 and 24 was a busy one, but not in your routine Uncle Steve backs up the money truck type of way. Instead of spending huge in free agency, the Mets looked to build a consistent contender through savvy moves and player development, a model that has worked really well for a lot of the other good teams throughout the league. They began by first hiring Manhattan native David Stearns away from the Brewers to become the president of baseball operations, and then named Carlos Mendoza their new manager. That's not to say they didn't do anything in free agency. They focused on reclamation projects, finding guys that had probably not played as well as they could, meaning signing them would be a little cheaper, but the ceiling is high. You know, guys like Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, and Tyrone Taylor. Also, unlike many of the previous collapses, with new management and a pretty clear shift in approach on how they build teams, the fan base assumed a rebuilding year and seemed to be kind of open to it. Then the season began, and it definitely looked like a rebuilding year. It took no time at all for the internet to slap on the old LOLmets label, as opening day featured a traditional honoring of a veteran. This year's honoree was World War II veteran Seymour Wieners. That's not a controversy, it's just something that you notice, which unfortunately sometimes precedes other things that are controversy. So at this point, the fingers are crossed. 5 days later, the Mets are 0-5. And by the end of May, they're sporting a record of 22-33. On May 29th, after getting swept by the Los Angeles Dodgers, the team had a players-only closed-door meeting that night. Though I wasn't there, I can confidently say that sometimes you just gotta circle up and say what you gotta say. And it worked. Whatever they discussed seemed to have an immediate impact on the team and began to look like they were playing a little more loose, even enjoying themselves. A couple weeks later, they embraced a force that had only worked against them for the past 20 years, the power of the gimmick. On June 12th, McDonald's mascot Grimace threw out the first pitch for the Mets. Yes, the big purple blob thing. What even is Grimace? Whatever he is, his presence seemed to make a difference because the team then rattled off 7 straight wins. Coincidence? Probably. The connection was not lost on the fan base as the team quickly climbed back to 500 by the end of that month, and they even began to refer to their players as the Grimace Mets. The team embraced it, even unveiling a purple Grimace seat at Citi Field. That is one thing the Mets do really well. They're really quick with that stuff.
Embodiment of a milkshake.
Apparently, Grimace is the embodiment of a milkshake. He's a metaphor for a milkshake.
Whatever the hell that means.
At the same time, veteran infielder Jose Iglesias, a journeyman who had only been with the big club for a short time, added his own rallying gimmick. As a musician in his off time, he was scheduled to release a new song titled OMG at the end of June. He made it his walk-up song, and he was even playing it in the clubhouse. Because as they say, always be plugging. The song went viral, even hitting #1 on the Billboard Top 100 Latin hits. It was a sensation. A period of time reminiscent of the Knicks' Linsanity run in 2012. For the first time in years, the team seemed unburdened by expectations and disappointment, and we're simply having fun, which is the point. Believe it or not, that's supposed to be the point. The Mets had turned their year around, hallmarked by the exceptional play from their young core, a group of guys that fans had heard about for years before that were actually starting to contribute in a big way at the big league level. While Francisco Lindor put up an MVP caliber season, he was flanked by a breakout year from then rookie Mark Vientos at third base and continued development of a budding young star at catcher, Francisco Alvarez. With a clutch comeback against their division rival, those same Atlanta Braves from 2022, and the 12-team playoff format, the Mets snuck their way into the playoffs and had a magical run to the NLCS, eventually falling to the eventual World Series winner, the Los Angeles Shohei Ohtani Dodgers. Dodgers is their name. All in all, the fans finally got a season where their expectations were exceeded, and the general feeling going into 2025 was that of real hope, of stability in an organization that has needed it for years. So is the curse over? Is this really the end? What does the future hold? Red flags. Seasons where the Mets go for broke and spend big. 2002, 2007, 2021, 2023. All big years where the Mets spent a ton of money in the offseason. All those seasons also ended in catastrophic disappointment. Will the $750 million man be the one that breaks this pattern? God, I hope so. Please. When the payroll rises, so then do the expectations. Raising expectations can lead to more pressure from the fans and from the media. The 2021 thumbs down fiasco, a lack of success in 2023 after a 101 win season, all of these had high expectations, and the pressure seemed to be a little bit too much those years. Understandably, they were all met with ridicule from a fan base that was in pain. Like the LOLmets phrase is literally the fans making fun of the team. It's a defense mechanism. It makes you feel better. It's like self-deprecating as if you're part of it. Trust me, I know all about that. That said, expectations changed a little bit in 2024 and things worked out. So far in 2025, it's a different feeling. And that could be what inevitably tips the scales. Fortunately, they seem to have found their guy, the top of this organization in David Stearns, combined with Steve Cohen's very public commitment to doing whatever he needs to do to keep this team competitive is something the organization has never had in its history. All of those things are a big green flag. And currently, the team's in first place. Not a jinx. Nothing I say matters. I have no control over anything. The Gimmick held a lot of power for the Mets in 2024, and while you should keep things fresh season to season, 2025 will even see McDonald's bring back Grimace as his Irish counterpart, Uncle O'Grimacy. He's a green milkshake. What are we doing? Oh, it's for the Shamrock Shake. Duh. This is the healthiest the Mets team and front office has looked in years. They have an owner who actually gives a shit, a president who has a plan and can handle the media, and a manager that knows what he's doing. 2024 was a great year for the Mets, and so far 2025 has been a good year. But what I care about is all of that together. They've put themselves in a position to be able to do the things that they need to do every single day in order to win a lot of baseball games. The team may have just put the LOLmets behind them. Every meme dies someday, and now might be the time. I finished filming this video about 2 weeks ago, and we've already had a controversy. Though this one doesn't seem like a huge deal, and the voice of reason once again is Uncle Steve. Look, I had a blast making this thing. I want to make more of these in the future, so let me know down in the comments what other videos you think I should make that are similar. Also, did you catch the baked good? If you said banana cream pie, you would be correct. Banana cream pie, down in the comments, please. Also, hit me with a timestamp if you know exactly where it was. Thank you so much for watching as always, and make sure you subscribe on your way out the door. I'll see you next time on the Trevor May Baseball channel. I'm so tired.